Hey there, welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 327. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is just some miscellaneous toys that I've acquired over the last couple of months. I've got Casey here with me as co-host today, and I don't know if she's going to want to talk about her toys, but she's got Triple Bone here. This is one of her favorites. But anyway, so new toys. I've got a bunch of new stuff lately. I've got some new G.I. Joes. I've got some Transformers, which when they arrived, I realized these are my first Transformers of 2024. Transformers has been one of my, it's like one of my larger collections, and I've been collecting it pretty steadily since about like 2005 when the Classics or Generations line first launched. And it's never really waned. So I've been collecting Transformers as an adult for nearly 20 years. And it kind of surprised me when I realized that 6 months have gone by and I haven't bought any Transformers. But yeah, now I have a bunch of them. But I figure I'll do a whole Transformers episode on those. So yeah, I've got new G.I. Joes, new Marvel Legends, new Transformers, new Masters of the Universe, some new DC superpowers. So lots of stuff to talk about. But like I said, I'd rather do an episode devoted to those brands because I have enough of them to do that. And for some of those things, I'm hoping to have my co-host Chad with me. I actually invited him over tonight for this episode, but he wasn't able to make it. So I just thought, well, what the hell? I'll do it. I'll do it anyway, just to get some of this stuff cleared off of my desk. So where to start? Actually, the first thing I'm going to mention is in the last episode that me and Chad had done, I mentioned that a friend of mine had written a book and I had just ordered it. So it has since arrived. So this book is called To Walk on Worlds by Matthew John. I ordered this on Amazon. It was like $20, I think. But yeah, I'm about halfway through it, you can see, and really enjoying it. And this isn't, I'm not a big novel reader. I read so many comic books. I have a stack of graphic novels on my bedside table like this high. So I'm reading every night, and I'm out on my deck reading almost every sunny day I have. I don't read a whole lot of novels. So I bought this to support my buddy, and I'm really enjoying it. It's quite good. It's an anthology book, a bunch of little short stories. He's a huge Conan fan, so they're all kind of in that same vein, kind of swords and sorcery and warriors. And anyway, it's cool. So if you're into this sort of stuff at all, I would implore you to check out To Walk on Worlds by Matt John. What else? Another kind of not so interesting thing to talk about is I recently ordered some action figure stands. Now, this is a thing that it pains me to have to spend money on things like that because I already spend so much money on my collectibles that when I have to buy things like bags and boards for my comic books, it's an expense that kind of sucks because you'd rather be spending that money on collectibles, but you want to keep the stuff in display condition. So that's just part of it. With action figures, I really wish that they all just came with their own display bases, but hardly any of them do. All these G.I. Joe classified figures you see here, they don't have display stands, so I've got to buy like generic stands and hope that they work. They often don't because the figures themselves have different like size peg holes on the bottom of their feet. So one stand does not work across the board. And maybe I'll be able to find like some clear circular stands for some figures and then some rectangular black stands for other figures. Sometimes the figures don't even have holes in their feet, and so then you can't put a display base on them, or you have to find one that's got like a little arm with a little cuff to put around their waist. And it's a real pain in the ass to try and find display bases to fit all your different figures. Plus, it really breaks up the look of a display when you've got a variety of display bases under your figures. So, yeah, I've got hundreds of Marvel Legends figures that you guys can't see, but they're right ahead of me here on either side of my tablet here. I've got these two bookshelves full of Marvel Legends. They don't have any display stands because I just can't find enough of them that fit all the figures. Plus, it would cost me a fortune to try and buy stands to cover all those figures. Anyway, One of my collections that's been growing quite a bit in the last few years is the 3 3/4 inch reaction figures from Super 7. And they don't come with display stands, but because they're kind of small figures, especially like the female figures, they have like petite little feet, they don't stand up very well on their own. Now, a lot of the times, um, little GI Joe stands will work with reaction figures. The problem is most of my GI Joe stands are used up for my other figures, so I don't really have display bases for reaction. Now, Super 7, a while back, maybe a couple of years ago, they started selling their own reaction figure branded display bases. And for me, it wasn't really worth the money. I thought you could probably buy generic stands for cheaper, but I haven't seen too many generic stands around for a while. And I was ordering some figures from Big Bad Toy Store, and they had some of these stands on there. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to buy a pack of 10. So the 10 stands are about $12 American, which probably works out to me. I don't even want to think about it. They're probably about $17 Canadian, and then when you factor in the shipping and the customs charge that I had to pay, these stands probably cost me like $3 each or something crazy. Anyway, so I got them, and they're nice little stands. I thought they were just clear, little like hexagonal. Is that the right word? Uh, anyway, these little 6-sided stands. And what I didn't realize until I actually had them in hand is that they say Super 7. They're kind of Super 7 branded here. And there's like a little ridge, a little raised ridge, which you guys probably can't see there. But it says reaction figures on the little base, which I like. It's nice. And yeah, some of my new reaction figures came in the same order from Big Bad Toy Store. Now, some of these figures I talked about in a prior video, so I won't go into a review of these figures because I already told you that they were coming and I talked a little bit about them then. But I got a couple of Return of the Living Dead reaction figures. So this here is Tarman, and he looks pretty great. And he fits on the display stand nicely. There's one peg on there, it plugs into his foot. And this is the type of guy, because he's just a skeleton, essentially, he would be he's got very thin legs. He would definitely fall over on a bookshelf on his own. So having that display base gives him a nice solid base, and now he'll stand up, which is great. Similarly, I got Trash from Return of the Living Dead. She's also kind of a petite figure with small little feet. She would definitely fall over if I put her on my bookshelf without a display base. She fits on this display stand perfectly. A couple other reaction figures I got in that same order. These guys don't really need display bases. So I got the glow-in-the-dark Megalon and Gigan from the Godzilla reaction figure line. These guys are both fun. And I have all my Godzilla reaction figures on display. These are actually the only reaction figures that I do currently have on display. All my other ones are just in a bin right now, partly because they won't stand up on their own. Because the Godzilla ones tend to have bigger, wider feet, they stand up just fine. So I've got them on display. So these guys I can add to my Godzilla reaction display, which is just over here on my desk. So that's fine. But of my Godzilla reaction figures, the monsters tend to have wider stances. But some of the other characters, like Jet Jaguar, who is a thin, kind of human-shaped robot, he's a guy that I find falls over all the time. And he's one of the characters that I wanted to get these display bases for. Now, I have a couple of different repaints, different colors of Jet Jaguar, and the display base works just great for the ones that have holes, but my glow-in-the-dark Jet Jaguar doesn't have any holes in his feet. So the display base doesn't work with him. No display base will work with him. And he's thin-legged, so he's always going to be toppling over on my shelf. So that's really frustrating. I hadn't really checked all of my specific figures to see which ones have holes or which ones don't. But I was surprised to learn that this Jet Jaguar does not have holes when the other 3 Jet Jaguars I have do, because it's probably all the same mold. And anyway, whatever. So I like these reaction figure display bases. If you were curious about checking them out, they do work well. But I just wish that if you're going to make reaction figures and you're going to make reaction figure branded stands, that you make sure it works with all of the figures. Is it so hard to put holes in a character's feet? Like, come on, Super 7. Anyway, so that's that. I do have a couple other reaction figures to talk about. Now, these ones did not come from Big Bad Toy Store, and I have not talked about them on a prior episode. These ones were convention exclusives. About a month ago, there was a G.I. Joe, it's not just G.I. Joe, but primarily G.I. Joe convention called Joe Fest. And Super 7 was there, and they had a couple of exclusive G.I. Joe figures available at the Joe Fest. And then whatever figures they didn't sell at the convention, they put them up on the website like the following day. And I scooped them up because I didn't want to risk missing out on them. But, and see, I've got them in little Ziploc-y bags here. This is how most of my reaction figures are stored. Once I get them, I take a picture of them for Instagram, I show you guys on a video, and then I seal them up in a little Ziploc bag and I throw it in a bin. It's not ideal, especially for a brand new toy that I'm excited to have gotten, but it's just before I had the display stands, it was just I had nowhere to display them. I didn't know what to do with them. So the plan will be to eventually buy more of those reaction figure display stands, enough for all my reaction figures, and then I can display them all. So anyway, this here is a reaction figure named Glenda. Now, you might not, that name might not mean much to you. You kind of have to be pretty hardcore into G.I. Joe to really know who Glenda is. But this is a repaint of the Scarlet reaction figure that I already have. I actually have that same Scarlet figure, I think, 4 times now, because I have the standard one, the glow-in-the-dark one, the Tiger Force one, and now I have this one repainted to look like Glenda. Now she's got like white boots, white gloves, blonde hair, kind of a baby blue outfit, and then the kind of silver bathing suit type thing over top of her like onesie or whatever. Anyway, I think it's really cool. The paint is really nice. It's not vac metal chrome, but it's definitely got a metallic sheen to it. So yeah, it looks quite nice. So yeah, I got Glenda. And the other one I got here, this is just another repaint. This is a repaint of the Commando Snake Eyes figure. He's got a couple of accessories here. He's got a little gun and a crossbow. Glenda had a little laser gun herself. But this here is Cobra Mortal. So even though he's just Snake Eyes repaint, he's painted in these crazy colors where he's primarily the same kind of reflective metallic silver as Glenda. And then he's got one red arm, one red leg, and one black boot. Very bizarre color scheme. And then he's got a big red Cobra logo on his chest. So that way you know he's not Snake Eyes. And yeah, I was super stoked about getting this guy. I think he looks great. I don't have another version of Cobra Mortal that looks like this, and I have wanted one for a long time. And I'm really wrestling with the fact that Super 7 has another Cobra Mortal figure exclusive coming out this weekend. As I film this, it is San Diego Comic-Con, and there are all kinds of exclusive San Diego Comic-Con figures available at the convention this week. Some of them will be available for sale like online after the convention, like the Super 7 stuff. I'm pretty confident that as long as I log on to Super 7's website, as soon as it goes on sale, I should be able to get everything I want, which they have quite a few of them. They have some more glow-in-the-dark Godzilla reaction figures, some other Godzilla repaints. What else? Anyway, they've got a Cobra Mortal, except this time it's their ultimate figure. So Super 7, not only do they do the small 3 3/4 inch reaction, but they do the larger, like 7-inch ultimate figures, which they're really nice looking, but I decided a while ago that I was not going to collect them. Partly because I'm just already all in on G.I. Joe Classified, which is a 6-inch line of G.I. Joes. And the ultimate figures are just way too expensive. In Canada, these figures cost about $80. And it's just $80 a piece. That's a lot for a G.I. Joe. So I decided not to collect that line. However, Cobra Mortal, he looks really nice. And he's a character that might not get made in the classified line because he's by no means a mainstream G.I. Joe character. So I'm really tempted to get that ultimate Cobra Mortal. I just don't know if it makes sense because he's just going to be a standalone piece in my collection. He won't really fit in with my classified, so I can't display him there. He's probably just going to end up in my glass cabinets out in my other room where I keep my other Ultimates figures, like my Thundercats Ultimates and my Ninja Turtle Ultimates. So yeah, he's just going to be this loner that doesn't really fit in anywhere. So I don't know if I should get him or not. But he's just a character I'm really excited about. And I've talked a little bit about foreign G.I. Joes before, but I'll just quickly explain to you who these characters are, in case you haven't heard me talk about it before. But I was a huge G.I. Joe fan when I was a kid in the 80s. And when G.I. Joe, like, it went dormant in the early 90s, and it kind of really came back with a vengeance around 2002. And by this point, I was a young adult. I was, living in my own apartment. I had some disposable income, and I was just super excited to see G.I. Joe was back, and I started collecting it. And the internet was around now. Believe it or not, this was still kind of the relatively early days of the internet. And I was going on these G.I. Joe websites and G.I. Joe message boards, because a lot of the new G.I. Joe figures that were coming out weren't readily available in my area here in Eastern Canada. So I had to go onto other websites to try and find them to purchase. And by doing that, I found these news sites and these message boards and all this other stuff. And I found this whole online G.I. Joe community. And I started learning about all kinds of stuff of G.I. Joe in the 80s and 90s that I never knew about before and had no way of knowing about it, because without an internet, maybe if you had bought like some specialty G.I. Joe magazines or something, but I don't even know if those existed. Anyway, so once I got online, I found out about these international releases of G.I. Joes that were only available in other countries. And I bought this guide way back when. This was published back in 2004. And this is just like it's got a coil binder thing here. But yeah, so this here is the International Action Figure Archive. And it talks about all the different repaints from all the different countries. And now right on the front there, you'll see that is a repaint of Snake Eyes. That's not Cobra Mortal, but that is Cobra Diaco. That is another Snake Eyes repaint. But also here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's Scarlet in the blue and silver. So that is the original 1982 Scarlet figure that was released in another country in these other colors, and they called her Glenda. So that's where these characters come from. These are based on foreign international repaints that most of us kids in North America had no idea about until the advent of the internet and collector cons, and fans were able to connect with one another. So yeah, a lot of the figures, when you look at figures from other countries, are the exact same as the ones that were released in America. Like, same paint job, same name, all that sort of stuff. But in Argentina, there was a bunch of unique characters. So this book is broken up by country. So alphabetically, it starts with Argentina. And you'll see here right beside each other is Cobra Mortal and Glenda, which are the repaints of Snake Eyes and Scarlet. Scarlet comes with Flash's like laser rifle. Cobra Mortal comes with Scarlet's crossbow. And again, those same accessories carry through on these reaction figures. So this is very, very cool. Now, another reason why these are particularly exciting is that a lot of these kind of foreign repaint characters did get updates in other ways. So in the, like, what we call the modern G.I. Joe line, which ran from about 2007 to 2019 or so, the 4-inch figures, they made a lot of these characters that we had never seen before in the North American market. And they made Cobra Mortal, but they made Cobra Mortal in his secondary outfit, which is an all-white outfit with a silver head. So I have that version of Cobra Mortal, but I was never able to get the red, black, and chrome version. So to get this version now from Super 7, this is my first time ever to own that Cobra Mortal. This Glenda, technically it's my first Glenda figure too, but in the 4-inch line, they released what they called Pilot Scarlet, which was a Scarlet in those colors, the blue and the silver and the white. However, because they didn't go all in and call her Glenda, they called her Pilot Scarlet, she still had Scarlet's red hair. So it was kind of a cheat. It was a bit of an homage to Glenda, but they didn't go all the way. So this time here, Super 7 straight up repainted Scarlet, gave me Glenda, repainted Snake Eyes, gave me Cobra Mortal, and I think they're awesome. Super excited about that. What else? What else? What else? Here's just a little rinky-dinky thing I'm going to talk about. I went to the dollar store the other day. For many, many years, our dollar store has sold just knockoff junk, like, or maybe not knockoff, but just really low-end figures. But in recent years, they've been getting a lot of good stuff. We don't have here in Canada the discount stores like in the United States. They have stores like Ollie's and Dollar Tree or something, and they always seem to have GI Joes and things there. Here in Canada, we have Dollarama, and they don't ever get like mainstream figures like GI Joes from Hasbro or anything like that. But in recent years, they've been starting to get more and more stuff. This is not really a high-end figure by any means, but I got this little teeny merman. This guy was $3. Now, maybe he should only be $1. There's not much to him, but these figures I've seen sell in Walmart for like $10, and they're definitely they're not worth $10 to me. Anyway, so this was just a little impulse buy from the other day because Merman is like one of my favorite characters ever. I've got a bunch of Mermans kind of standing behind me here. I love Merman. So yeah, this guy's kind of cool. And actually, I have a bunch of these figures. When Mattel first released these things, they released them online only, and you bought them in 2-packs, and every 2-pack came with a piece to build a Castle Grayskull. So you can see it's upside down there, but I've got Castle Grayskull with all my little minifigures, and they're really cute. But once I had them all, I had nowhere to really display them, so they just ended up in a bag, and they're in a bin. So I never really see those things. And so I've seen these around, had no intention of buying any more of them, even though they're cute, because I already knew, well, it's just going to end up in a bin anyway. And I already had a merman. However, when I saw this merman, this one is based on the vintage figure from the 80s, whereas the merman that I already had in my collection that I had bought online years ago was based on his kind of mini comic look. So they are actually pretty different. So I thought, what the hell, $3. I'm going to add another merman, even if he does end up in a little bin. Hopefully, I'll find some room to display these things someday. And even if I don't, at least I have him. He's cute. All right, another thing I'm going to talk about quickly, because I've got 2 cool things to talk about. So I'm just getting through the little stuff first. My all-time favorite movie is The Crow. I could devote an episode to The Crow. I absolutely love it. I think it's a perfect movie. And yeah, they're remaking it. There's a new version of The Crow coming out in August, I believe, so we're probably only a couple weeks away from that movie coming out. I'm excited to see it. I don't expect it to be very good. I hope it is. I'd love to love it. No matter how good it is, it will never replace the original. The original one is good for so many reasons that you can't replicate. It's got some emotional weight behind it. I won't go into it now if you're not familiar with The Crow and all that stuff, but maybe look into it. Or if you've never seen it, go see the original Crow with Brandon Lee. It's fantastic. Anyway, this new version, I'm leery of. A lot of people that know The Crow is my favorite movie have asked me, like, oh, are you worried about the new remake? Do you think it's going to be good? I'm not worried about it because I don't expect it to be good. It'll be a nice surprise if it is. But I'm not freaking out that they, had the nerve to remake my favorite movie because they already made 3 sequels to The Crow, and each one of them got a little bit worse. And then they did a Canadian TV show, which was pretty rough too. And there have been lots of Crow comic books of varying degrees of quality. So it's not like, it's this one precious piece of art that has never been touched. It's had lots of different kind of adaptations over the years. And the original movie happens to be the pinnacle, I think. Arguably, the original graphic novel that it was based on and the movie, that was the top. They've never really come close. I hope this movie is good. It seems like the people that are making it are putting care into it. They want to make a good movie, but I think that's the case with every bad movie. Nobody's trying to make a bad movie. So I don't know. I've been staying away from any early reviews or anything like that, but I have seen the trailer, and that did not fill me with a whole lot of confidence. Anyway, I have a Crow Funko Pop. I've had this guy in my collection for quite a while, and I do have a pretty big collection of Funko Pops. I've kind of stopped buying them just because I have too many, and they're all most of the ones I have are still in boxes, and I've got them just stacked floor to ceiling in my other room there because I don't have the shelf space to open them up and display them. So it just becomes easier to stack the boxes, and I just end up looking like I'm a retail store or something with all these things. I've got them stacked like too deep, so I can't even see the figures in the back. And it would just get to the point where I'm like, why am I even buying these things? Uh, and if I was not an action figure collector, then sure, I would want a little Funko Pop of my favorite movie to put on my desk at work or something. But I am an action figure collector, and I have a dozen better action figures of the Crow, so the Funko Pop becomes kind of redundant. But anyway, because it's my all-time favorite, I have the Crow. This is a cute little figure. I was fine with having it. Anyway, earlier this year, they released a couple of new Crow Funko Pops, which I thought was a little strange because I don't think Funko Pop revisits movies very often. Like, sure, they've made dozens and dozens of Spider-Man and Batman Funko Pops, but when they do a standalone piece, like, say, Die Hard or The Fifth Element or The Godfather, kind of once they do it once, that tends to be it, and they move on to something else. So it seemed a little odd that they were redoing The Crow, although, considering there's a new movie coming out, I guess that makes sense. But this is where my gripe sort of comes in. So I've got it. Here's the Crow. I picked it up. There was 2 different versions available. One of them is basically the same as this one. It's him with his arms kind of spread wide with his trench coat on. So they remade this one. So I didn't want to get the exact same one. So this one here I got is the other version where he doesn't have his coat on. And he's walking. He's got his guitar strapped to his back. And if you've seen the movie, every time he kills somebody, he leaves a crow symbol behind. So there's one scene when he draws a crow in gasoline and throws a match down, and then the flames light up as the shape of a crow. So in this one here, there's a base of a flaming crow that he's walking through, and it's pretty cool. And you can definitely tell they've improved the design of these Funko Pops than from when this one was out, because this guy he's very featureless. The makeup around the eyes is kind of goofy and cartoony looking. The hair is, it's not very film accurate or anything. I'm not looking for film accuracy with Funko Pops, so I thought this was fine at the time. But once I got this one, I was like, yeah, this one looks kind of silly now by comparison, because this one has just a better sculpt on the hair. The face makeup is so much more like the movie. I love the flame effect. He's got a crow sitting on his wrist. He's got his guitar strapped to his back. It's just a lot of detail in a little Funko Pop. And I think he's really cool. So I resisted buying these new crows at first, but I did cave once I saw it in hand at my local comic book shop. I thought, yeah, you know what? I better buy this. I might regret it if I don't. So yeah, here he is. He's the Crow. He's pretty cool. But what I find odd is the new movie's coming out, so let's make a new Crow Funko Pop. But this Crow is based on the original 1994 movie. This is the Brandon Lee version of the Crow, because the new Crow movie, he does not have long black hair. Instead, he's got short hair and a bunch of stupid face tattoos. So they didn't make a Crow for the new Crow movie. They made a new version of the old Crow. And I actually, even if it's bad, I would have liked a Funko Pop of the new Crow. I would have taken both if they wanted to redo this one, great. But I would also like a Funko Pop of the new Crow, because all those sequels I mentioned earlier, they're not great, but I kind of have a soft spot for all of them, especially the second one, Crow City of Angels. It's in a lot of ways just a remake of the first Crow. So why wouldn't I love it? I love the first Crow so much. So this is a shittier version of it, but I still can enjoy it. And the crows, they did change the look. Like some of the other crows did have shorter hair. They didn't all have long black hair because it was a different character. Like the first crow had Eric Draven, but then later crows, it was a different character that died and had to be resurrected by the crow to avenge the death of a loved one or whatever. So it wasn't supposed to be the same character in each movie. So it would make sense that he looks different. And I have always wanted a collectible, whether it be an action figure or a Funko Pop, or like I have a Eric Draven Crow, a nice 12-inch Hot Toys version, which is like, a $250 premium action figure. I would pay that again to get a Crow from City of Angels. That character's name was Ash. I would love to get an Ash action figure, whether it's a hot toy, whether it's a Funko Pop, a reaction figure, a detailed 6-inch figure, whatever the case might be. Another thing I would love to see is the other characters from the original Crow movie. They're very memorable characters. The Crow has to kill his way through a group of bad guys until he gets to the top. The top bad guy being Top Dollar. But then there's Tintin and T-Bird and Funboy and Skank. All these characters are fun, and I would love to have action figures of them, and nobody has ever done that. Many, many years ago, I actually wrote into Toy Fair magazine and asked their opinion. I'm like, do you think anybody will ever give us Crow figures, not of the Crow, but of the supporting cast? And they kind of like laughed me. They laughed at me in the letter column. They're like, I don't think so. I don't think anybody's looking for those things. But I can't be the only one. I'm sure somebody else wants Crow figures. So I hope this new Crow movie is successful, and I hope it results in some new Crow action figure based on the new movie. I just think it would be fun to have other versions of this character in my collection instead of just the Brandon Lee, Eric Draven 10 times over. It'd be nice to have a little bit of variety. Anyway, now I think we can finally get on to some of the cool stuff. Before we move on to my last two toys, I do just want to mention what a bad co-host Casey is. Casey has joined me for a few episodes in the past, and I always get a lot of comments from people being like, oh, that's a really cute dog, because I used to sometimes hold on to her while I was doing these episodes. It gets a little hard to do that when I'm trying to hold up toys and show you. So I came down here, I set up my tablet, I set up my light, I've got my chair ready, just a single chair since Chad wasn't with me. I had everything else cleared away. And I sat down, hit record, and then Casey is scratching at the door to my room here, and she would have been distracting the whole time. So I brought her in, set her up with a chair, got her bed here so she could join me. And now she's just hidden away. She's not giving me any little cute credibility here. She's not coming up to see you guys. So I wish she was a little bit more involved than she is, but she looks pretty comfortable over here in her bed. So I'll leave her to it. But anyway, so the last two toys I want to talk about, one of them is from McFarlane's DC Multiverse line. Now, I don't buy a lot of these figures. You can see I have some DC figures displayed behind me here, but a lot of my DC collection I bought from DC Direct years ago, before McFarlane had the license. And I was really pleased with the figures that DC Direct made for the most part. So, I had these awesome like 6-inch versions of the characters I wanted. So that was great. And then when McFarlane started putting out really cool 7-inch versions of the same characters, it was just hard for me to justify starting this whole collection all over again. I'm more interested in McFarlane's smaller Superpowers line because that's got a more of a stylized approach. They're kind of cool. So I like those. My buddy Chad, who is often on this show with me, he collects the DC Multiverse, and he's got a pretty big collection of them. I usually just wait for like my absolutely favorite characters. So this character went up for pre-order a couple of months ago, and I immediately jumped at it. I was like, I need this guy. This guy's really cool. Because one of my favorite DC characters is the villain Darkseid. He is a Jack Kirby creation. He screams Jack Kirby in his design. He looks really cool. He's a big menacing character. He predates Thanos, but I'm more well-versed, and probably most of the world at this point is more familiar with Thanos than Darkseid. So he's basically the DC Universe version of Thanos. They share a lot of kind of similar attributes. They're similarly mega powerful. So yeah, that's who Darkseid is. And so when this figure went up for pre-order, I was like, I got to get him. He was a little bit pricey because he's a deluxe figure. So rather than the usual kind of 7-inch figure, this guy's probably like more like a 9-inch figure. Anyway, so here he is, Darkseid. So big old box here. You can see he's got alternate head. He's got a couple alternate hands. Some really nice artwork on the back. Now, I don't know why they didn't go with Jack Kirby artwork on the back. Would have been nice, maybe. But anyway, they do call this Darkseid Classic, which it does have a very classic look to him. Now, a figure I bought not too long ago was McFarlane's Darkseid from Zack Snyder's Justice League movie. Now, I didn't love that movie, and I didn't love the redesign for Darkseid, but it was cool enough that I wanted it, and I wanted an upgrade of my Darkseid figure, because the Darkseid figure in my collection from DC Direct is great. I love this. Like, this really captures the design of Jack Kirby's artwork. But this figure is deteriorating. It is, I don't know what DC Direct used to make these line of figures, but they did a whole line of New Gods figures, and I bought a bunch of them, and it's like they're melting. Like the plastic is sticky to touch, and when I had him on display, he would attract like dust bunnies, and you couldn't brush the dust off because it would stick to him. It's like the plastic is literally just deteriorating and like melting away. It turns into this gross kind of like yellowy earwax on his plastic. It's not as bad on Darkseid as it is on some of the other New Gods figures I have, such as Light Ray. Light Ray has an all-white suit, and he's really gross looking now because he's got this like yellowy earwax stuff just oozing down his legs and stuff. So anyway, I'm sure it's only a matter of time before these figures just melt into nothingness. So that's kind of a bummer because I love this Darkseid figure, but because of the stickiness and everything, he's currently been boxed away. He hasn't been on display. That was one of the reasons why I bought that Zack Snyder version of Darkseid, just because I wanted a Darkseid to display in my collection. You can't really see him, but he's back here behind Godzilla and right here in this corner. Anyway, he's pretty cool. But this new Classics one is way cooler. So yeah, here he is in the box. And magically, I have one here already open. And that's because I pre-ordered this figure for both me and for Chad. I picked them up the other day, and I haven't seen Chad yet to give it to him. So his is still waiting here boxed up. But here's mine opened up in all of his glory. You can see how big he is here. He's a nice big girthy figure. He looks to be about the same height, maybe even a little taller than the Zack Snyder version of Darkseid. I'll insert a little like side by side here with them. But he's definitely bigger than the old one that I had, like significantly bigger. And yeah, he looks great. He's got a soft goods cape that's wired, so you can bend the wire and kind of pose it. I will say I haven't handled this guy very much because I just got them like 2 or 3 days ago, and I barely handled him. He feels a little like lightweight, like he's almost like his torso's like hollow or something. I would kind of expect him to be heavier considering the size of him. So he feels a little, I don't want to say cheap, but he feels kind of cheap. But he looks good. Like he's got double jointed knees, single jointed elbows. But he seems to have pretty good articulation, I was going to say. But you know what? I don't even know if he swivels at the waist. He's got a bit of an ab crunch. Not a ton of one. And yeah, there's maybe a little bit of swivel here. It's hard to tell because he's got this big, thick belt on. So I can't tell what kind of joint is hiding beneath it, but I don't want to risk turning him and snapping him in half or something. So yeah, I would actually say the articulation is maybe a little limited in certain spots. And maybe he's overly articulated where you don't need him to be. Like, for example, he's got toe articulation, which I'm not a big fan of, but he has it. Yeah, so he's got alternate hands as well. So right now, this is how he came out of the box. So he's got one open hand and one closed fist. You can replace this hand and give him a closed fist here as well, and you can replace this fist with this pointing finger. So there you go. And then for heads, this one here, I don't know. I kind of like it. When I first got this figure and I saw him in the box, I was like, I don't know if I like that. He's got kind of this like effect because he shoots. It's like the anti-life equation. He shoots these beams of anti-life or something out of his eyes, and so that's what's going on here. He's got one eye with kind of this little laser trail coming out to the side, another one that's kind of glowing bright, like you would see on Cable or Longshot or somebody from the X-Men. But it's kind of growing on me. It's like a translucent red plastic, and it does look like he's maybe about to shoot you with eye lasers, or he just shot his eye lasers. But yeah, the alternate head is just a little bit more of a stoic. This one here, he's gritting his teeth. This one here, he's just looking regularly pissed off. And I do like it. I just don't know which one I like better. They're both good. Anyway, he's got this like his cape. It comes there's this big D medallion on his neck. I don't know if that's from his classic design or not. It doesn't really ring a bell with me seeing the big D on his chest there. I don't mind it, but anyway, he seems to be. I think this is pretty much the same costume that he has in the old Superpowers figure from the 80s, which is the look that I like. You'll notice it's a little different from the Jack Kirby one because this guy has like more of a skirt, like a tunic piece, where this guy's got more of a kind of a tighty whities thing going here. Also, this guy's boots, I'd say, are much higher. The Jack Kirby boots are about up to his knee. These one here are definitely like thigh-high hooker boots. So the designs are similar. I would definitely say this has got a classic design, but I don't know if it's as Jack Kirby as this one is. But that's okay. Anyway, he's a cool figure. I really like him. He is big. I wish he felt a little bigger, but yeah, as soon as I saw this guy up for pre-order, I knew I had to have it, and yeah, he delivers. I could see this guy being a contender when I do my best figures of the quarter, in September. Yeah, very very cool. That is Darkseid, and the last figure that I'm going to talk about here. This is from a smaller, I'd say newer company. They've been around for a little while. I've never purchased anything from them before. But they're called Titanic Creations. And my understanding is that for a while they've been making kaiju figures, but they've been making their own original kaijus. So, they have I think the character's name is Titanicus, and he's basically a big Godzilla-looking type of creature. So they were making these essentially vinyl figures. So just there are no articulation, just a simple kind of figure that you could order and you could add this character to your shelf, and it is what it is. I've been aware of them. I've seen some of their stuff. I liked some of their character designs, but their stuff were kind of pricey, and it just didn't really fit into my collection. I already spend enough money on toys based on properties that I love. I'm not really looking to branch out to find other things. So yeah, I didn't pay much attention to them, to be honest. But then I recently found out that they had made an action figure of the character of Gorgo. Now, if you're not familiar with Gorgo, he is basically a Godzilla knockoff. He is another big lizard monster that comes out of the ocean and stomps all over a city. And yeah, now that movie, I forget, I want to say, is it British made, perhaps? But yeah, I think the city he stomps on is London. Um, but anyway, it was, I can't remember the year of this movie. I want to say maybe the 1960s. So he's a good decade or so after the original Godzilla movie. So it was definitely inspired by Godzilla. But as far as the plot of Gorgo, it's more like King Kong. There's this island, and these British sailors come visit this kind of like native island, and they hear legends of this monster that comes out of the ocean and attacks the village. Anyway, they capture the creature, Gorgo, and they strap him to a ship, and they bring him to London, and they chain him up, and they put him on display like the eighth wonder of the world. Look at Gorgo, very much like the plot of King Kong. But then Gorgo's mother, who is a much larger lizard, comes out of the ocean to find her stolen baby, and she's the one that stomps all over London and rescues her baby. And the movie ends, spoiler alert, with the two creatures going off into the ocean. It's actually a really good movie. I'm a Godzilla fan, but I will admit that a lot of the movies are hard to watch. The plots with the humans are oftentimes boring. They're pretty goofy. Gorgo is played pretty seriously, and I think like the English actors that in it are taking the material seriously. I actually quite enjoyed Gorgo as a film, and I believe it's totally available to watch on YouTube. You can look up Gorgo full movie, and I think it's there available to watch. So I recommend it if you haven't seen Gorgo. So apparently, Titanic Creations got the rights to do a Gorgo figure. My understanding is that it's the first Gorgo figure ever made. So, this character from the 60s is now just getting an action figure in like 2023 or 2022, whenever they put out their first Gorgo. So the thing is, they did a crowd-funded Gorgo figure, which was under my radar. I wasn't aware of it. And the more backers they got, the more stuff they added to the box. So if you know how Kickstarter works, you always pay to get the main thing, and then if they get more and more people to fund it, then they give you stretch goals for free. So with the Gorgo figure, apparently you got the original Gorgo figure based on the movie. So he's kind of this like slick, oily green color. And then you got a couple extra like military planes and tanks and stuff. And then you got Big Ben, which is a big set piece in the movie when technically Gorgo's mother, knocks Big Ben over. So yeah, you get some building pieces, and it looks like it turned out to be a pretty cool set. Pretty good bang for your buck. Anyway, I was not aware of that, so I missed out on it. But when I did become aware of Gorgo action figures, is they said they were going to re-release their figure in comic book colors. So instead of the kind of slick, dark green of the original figure based on the actual movie, they were doing bright, kind of cartoony frog green based on the comic books, which I was excited about because I am more familiar with the Gorgo comic books than I am the Gorgo movie. I had read all of the comic book series before I had ever seen the movie. So this collection here is a hardcover collection of the Gorgo comic books by Steve Ditko. If you're not familiar with Steve Ditko, he's the guy that co-created Spider-Man with Stan Lee. He was the artist that first drew Spider-Man. So he's got a distinct style. Now in here, this book is really cool because it gives you some information about the movie. It shows you some behind-the-scenes stuff. It shows you some original movie posters. And then it reprints all of the original Steve Ditko comic books. And they're kind of goofy and kind of repetitive. You'll see there's Gorgo captured in chains, and then Gorgo's mother is there showing up to rescue him. That seemed to happen a lot in the comic books. It was like the plot of the movie kind of told in a slightly different way. But these were fun. I enjoyed them. So much so that this series here only collected the Steve Ditko issues. Every once in a while, Steve Ditko would be away, and they'd get a fill-in artist to do an issue. And when they did this Steve Ditko collection, they left out all the remaining issues. And I really wanted to find the rest of the Gorgo series, so I had to go get this other comic book, Gorgo Attacks, which fills in all the holes from the collection. So between these two books, I have the whole run of Gorgo comic books published in the 60s. And you'll see how Gorgo is this kind of bright, cartoony green on these comic books. So the Gorgo figure that they released, they put it up for pre-order a couple of months ago. So I pre-ordered my own version of comic book Gorgo, and he arrived just the other day. He came in this, decent sized box. It's not huge. So you get some original artwork there of Gorgo. It says Gorgo Legacy on the front. There's a little bit of a write-up on the side. Same artwork on the back, just for the title. So yeah, and then you pulled this out, and you had Gorgo in just kind of a clear plastic tray. My initial reaction was a little. I was surprised at how small it is. Anyway, here's Gorgo. Not even joking. This is Gorgo. So, Gorgo has no articulation. It's basically the type of thing you would get out of like a vending machine or something, like a small little plastic dinosaur. So, but it does have some nice paint apps. Like he's got a couple of different shades of green. His claws are painted, his eyes are painted, his teeth are painted. He's got little red pupils in his red eyes. So it's not a bad little figure. It's just funny that the box says Gorgo. It's all about Gorgo, but Gorgo is just the baby. The main attraction is really Gorgo's mother, whose name I believe is Ogra. So here is Ogra. So this is what you're really buying. You're not really buying a Gorgo figure per se. They just kind of call it that because that was the name of the movie. In the movie, Gorgo was still quite big. You know, he was like a T-Rex size, so he was still a huge animal. But to put it in scale with the mother, it comes across quite small. Anyway, so this is the whole set. This comic book set cost, I think, $60 US. So the original version, I think, was $100. So you don't get Big Ben and all the other accessories, which is kind of a bummer. But I understand those were kind of extra benefits for the people that helped crowdfund the original toy. So yeah, we don't get that benefit this time around. But it's pretty cool. Like size-wise, it's comparable to, say, a NECA Godzilla. It's not quite as big. I'll put in some shots here, but I think it's about to scale because I don't think Ogra is necessarily as big as Godzilla. It looks about right when you display Ogra next to Godzilla from NECA. I'm like, yeah, that seems about the same. Like they could be in scale together. I can display these together. If you put her next to a Godzilla from, say, Playmates, same kind of thing because it's basically the same scale. When you put her next to, say, one of Super 7's Ultimate Godzillas, like I have back here, then she ends up looking pretty small. And like Godzilla could just stomp on her or something. So depending on what figures you want to display her with, she can fit in quite nicely. But she is rather small, and she's not as thick and as heavy as some of those other like NECA, and definitely not as big as the Super 7s. So yeah, she just felt a little diminutive for what I paid. So like I said, it was about $60 Canadian or American, which ended up being about $90 or 80 something dollars Canadian plus shipping, which I think was about $25. So like overall, I'm in for more than 100 Canadian dollars for this, and it's I don't know if it feels worth it, but it's not completely crazy. She is well articulated. She's got these little kind of ball joints on her ankles. She's got toe articulation. She swivels at the wrist. Her jaw opens and closes, which is nice because even the Super 7 Godzillas don't have jaws that open and close. She moves well. I find her tail, it didn't break, but it came apart right out of the packaging. There's multiple links in the tail, and so you can move it around. It's got a good degree of movement, but the links do tend to come apart kind of easily, I think. So yeah, I thought it was pretty cool to get this figure. This was not a character that I ever thought I'd get in action figure form, just because it's some like kind of random old B movie. And you know, oftentimes these things, I don't think anybody is really looking to secure the rights to them, or maybe it's just too complicated to get the rights to them. I don't know, but yeah, Titanic Creations went ahead. They got Gorgo. They obviously delivered on the first one. Like it sold well enough that they thought they could do a repaint and release that one. As far as I know, this one basically it came close to selling out. I think they've said they've still got a few available on their website. But if you think this looks cool and you want to get one for yourself, and you probably will after you watch the movie, yeah, you should look into getting this sooner than later. And then they've also released a larger scale Ogra figure, or maybe it's Gorgo. I think they still market it as Gorgo, but I don't think you get the baby with it. So maybe that is actually supposed to be Gorgo in a larger size. I don't know, but it's a bigger figure. It's probably more on par with the Super 7 stuff, but that one was also more expensive. And I kind of thought, well, let me try this out first. I don't think I'm going to order the larger one, but if you want your figure to be a little bigger, That's an option. And it's in the movie colors, not the comic book colors. Although, who knows? If it sells really well, maybe they'll release the large one in comic book colors as well. But since this, they've also launched another campaign that was funded successfully. They have a Korean version of basically Godzilla. His name is Youngri, and it's an old Korean movie, I think also from the 60s. I had never heard of it, I'll be honest. I'd never heard of Youngri until I saw this campaign, but I am now familiar with him. I haven't seen the movie, but I have watched clips of it online and stuff. He looks pretty cool. He is another bipedal lizard character, but he's got kind of like a horn on his nose, and he can shoot a laser out of the horn, and he's cool looking. He looks different enough from Godzilla and from Gorgo that I feel justified getting it. So I have supported their crowdfunding for Youngri, and because I'm in on the ground floor for Youngri, I had the opportunity to get the stretch goals and stuff. So there's some really cool stuff coming with that figure too. So you get some tanks and some airplanes, and then you get some small buildings to display around them, and then you get a bridge, which the big scene in Youngri, I guess, is he knocks a big bridge over. So you get the bridge with that too. So that figure is supposed to ship before the end of the year. So hopefully I'll have Youngri before too long. And both Gorgo and Youngri will be competing for my best of the year list when the time comes. So yeah, these guys are pretty cool. Something different. And I'm pretty excited about it. So anyway, this episode has gone on long enough. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to talk about here. So I'll be back soon, hopefully with Chad, and we'll talk about our new G.I. Joes and my new Transformers and all that other stuff. So I'll see you then. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button and leave me comments below. And I'll see you next time. Ciao.